Hey, welcome back to another episode. You are tuned in right now to Riding Tandem. I'm your host, Vivian Kavam, and one of the co-founders with my partner, Michaela, of Tandem Works. And this podcast, as you may know, if you've been tuning in for a while, or perhaps this is a first episode, so you're just learning now, is all about encouraging people who are just doing really incredible things as business leaders, entrepreneurs, or maybe sitting on the sidelines right now thinking about starting your own thing. And this podcast is dedicated to encouraging you and giving you the practical tips that you need in order to make those entrepreneurial dreams a reality. Today's episode, just like the others, is with a wonderful guest. He's really awesome. In fact, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat here, this episode is a little bit longer than some of our other episodes because there was just so much. There was so much good conversation here, and it just felt like we had to keep going. And I really do think there might be a part 2 to this one for sure. So today's guest is Josh Kropkof, and he is the CEO and co-founder with his brother of the Email Agency. You're going to learn all about this boutique marketing agency that specializes in email and text marketing. And specifically, they help mostly businesses who are in the e-commerce space. However, don't tune out if you're in the service space because Josh gives so much good advice that is applied to both worlds. As well as, one of the things I appreciated about this interview is that though Josh and I had only met for about 8 minutes before we actually jumped into this conversation, Josh was willing to just share with so much candor what it took to get to where he's at, what it took for him and his brother to start their business. And he shares some really, as he put it, giant mistakes that he made in getting this business started. And he shares it with such candor, with such openness, that I know that you're just going to connect on such a deep level with Josh. He and his brother have been doing this business since 2018. They're in about their 6th year now. They're a small boutique firm, but they've done some really big, mighty things. And like I said, he talks about the very humble beginnings and some of the hard places that he's been when building this business, as well as some of the successes that they've realized. And then, of course, dives into some really practical email marketing tips as well. And the last thing I'm going to say about this before we jump into the episode is I made the mistake, and I say it again in there, but I just have to say it one more time. I made the mistake of thinking that email marketing was not that important. And I've got to say, it has definitely been one of my biggest mistakes is not getting into and understanding how email marketing works earlier, because it is one of my favorite ways of connecting with all of you. So thanks so much for being part of this episode. I hope you find it hugely valuable. And let's go ahead and just dive in here. All right. Well, welcome, Josh Kropkof, CEO and co-founder of the Email Agency. I'm just excited to jump in because we were already chatting before I hit record here. And I'm like, okay, hold up. We're already sharing good things, but
awesome.
I'm excited to have you, especially because I do actually open and read your emails, which we were just chatting about. I not only open and read them, I've actually taken a screenshot of some of them and shared them within our Facebook group. So I'm excited to actually get to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exciting because I think you're the first podcast host who said that. So that's a great start. So
yeah, it's awesome. Well, okay. As we always like to do, we like to level set on who are you, what do you do, and then we'll dive into your story a bit. But one of the things that stuck out for me and just everything I've read about you, because to be clear for everyone, some folks I have on the podcast I know really, really well, and for others, we've known each other for like 8 minutes.
5 minutes. Yeah.
So, but one of the things that stuck out to me is that you say that you're a boutique marketing agency, and I love that word boutique. So I'm curious to know more. So tell us about you, what you do, and what the email agency is all about.
Yeah. I'm Josh. Co-founder and CEO of the email agency. So I started this company with my brother in 2018, and I would say, boutique for us just means we're still pretty small. We're 9 of us total, and we are done for you. Like agency side is small. It's less than 10 clients right now that we're actually like doing work for consistently. And then it gets, usually we get about a dozen or so around like the Q4 time. But by contrast, a lot of the agencies in our space will have, 70, 100 clients. I've talked to one of the bigger ones that's got like 300 clients. And I think that can be good. It's definitely like a cool goal to like, I definitely want to grow our company for sure. That's a goal. But at the same time, like for us, quality, not just quality work, but quality relationships is really important. That's sort of how we built our business. Like I said, it's me and my brother, but the team that we work with is all of them are friends of ours. So our main guy, like our main operations manager, I would say, is his title. He is our friend that we have known since he was 7 years old, and he used to come over our house and like my mom would like watch him. Or his mom before school in the morning and stuff. So we've known each other forever. It's not like that with everyone on our team. We have some who we've known for a couple years and so forth, but we have like a really like friends and family culture here. And what you'll get with a lot of agencies out there, specifically ones who are doing marketing services for bigger brands, is a lot of them are just kind of outsourcing their work to, various places overseas. Not saying anything is necessarily wrong with that, but the relationship quality is definitely different. A lot of times the quality of work is not as good. And with our clients, like we are pretty selective about who we take on a like done for you capacity, to where really we're selective even on the other side where we have more clients that come in on a like consulting basis with us where they we sort of help them do it, and so we're able to take on more, and that's that part of the business because it doesn't require as much of our like time and labor. But we're selective all around. Like we want people who we've vetted them and we kind of know like this would be a perfect fit company. They're going to get results with us and they're likely to stick with us, right? As long as we get these results, they're likely to be here for a long time and we can actually build a relationship. So that's what we like. And I think that's the difference is I get a lot of business owners that come to me and they say like, I've had been through all these agencies, like I agency hop from one to the next. And like, it's always the same thing where like, I feel like they talk up a big game and then they pay a lot of attention to me in the first month and then they just disappear. And I feel like I'm not anybody to them. And, that's sad to me. So we absolutely don't want to be that. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but that's where I would say we're a boutique agency, but we have helped, a lot of like, good clients and some like more known clients, in e-commerce. One of our clients is, Giordano's, which is like a famous Chicago pizza, place. Another one is Craft Sportswear, which is it's a sportswear brand for athletes. They sponsor like Olympic athletes. So like if you watch the Olympics, their name shows up in the background and stuff. And a few others like that, and just mostly e-commerce businesses that sell online. So yeah, I'll let you talk again. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. That's so helpful. So you do email marketing.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? I think it's so easy to be like, we assume we know, right? Like, oh, email marketing agency, yeah, got it. But break it down to its basics. When you say email marketing, what does that look like for you and your agency?
So when any business that sells online has, traffic coming to their website, right? That's the goal, is we want as much traffic to our site as possible so we can sell whatever it is we're selling, our products, our services. And there's really three types of traffic. So the first is what I would call traffic that you don't control. And that would be, people call it organic traffic. So I can't I can't necessarily have direct control over how many people might hear this podcast and end up at my website, right? Or, SEO is something that takes a while to sort of establish yourself, right? And then there's, organic social and all of that. So that's one type of traffic. You can do a lot of things to build up that kind of traffic, but you can't like exactly control how it goes, because one change of the algorithm and it's, totally different. So that's one type. The second type is traffic you do control, and that would be your paid traffic. So anything where you are paying a platform for those eyeballs. Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or what have you, you're paying them for ads. And that is the second type of traffic. And you do control that by how much you pay. The third type of traffic, though, is what we call traffic you own. And there's only three potential types of traffic you own: your email list, SMS if you do text message marketing, and then direct mail if you send direct mail like snail mail. The best one of those three is email for sure. And we also do
you.
SMS marketing, by the way, but email is sort of like the golden calf of, or the golden, maybe not the golden calf, the golden egg or the golden
Yes.
goose. It's like the main source of owned traffic. And what's really cool is you do own it, meaning like the people that sign up for your email list, they are an asset, like a proprietary asset of your business. And you have to pay a platform to like send that email volume out. But other than that, you can send them pretty much whatever you want. It's very minimally like controlled by platforms, unlike the other channels, right? And it's also the most direct. It's a one-on-one thread between you and that person. And so it's the most direct marketing channel there is. And there's also, I think the latest numbers, it's something like 43 billion emails sent per day in the world. Think about that. Like
It's a
per
lot.
day. I mean,
Yes.
like, and what's crazy is it dwarfs everything. Like even the next highest is text messages, and that's only like 20 billion or something. And then like everything else is so much lower than that. So email through commerce, or commerce through email, is the biggest selling channel in the world, and it's not going anywhere. It's built on such an infrastructure that it is sort of like it'll be the one thing that's still there, even if the internet kind of goes away. God forbid, right? But like if
Right.
and like when you talk about individual channels, like we know they can change in a heartbeat. Google can
Mm-hmm.
change their algorithm. Facebook can change the way they do things, and you could say that about any of them. Email is always going to be there, and it's always going to be done the same way, not necessarily in terms of best practices, but just the way it works. Like you can send a direct piece of mail electronically from one person to another. So what we do, to answer your question, is we help businesses get the most out of that asset, because if you're evaluating your company, you should be able to put a value on that email list, right? Like how much money is this list worth? How
Mm.
much is every person on this list worth? What is their lifetime value? These are things that, to be honest, you have to be a bit more of a not advanced, but like you have to be a little further along in a business to really know those numbers, but just understand the concept of it. And you realize that like definitely it is worth your time as a business owner to spend some time and put some effort and spend some money or resources if you have to make this a valuable asset. So that's what we help businesses do.
I love it. And I mentioned this before we hopped on, and I'll say it again for everyone's benefit. I feel like this was one of the biggest mistakes that we have made. I'm sure we will make more in having businesses. And I've owned a couple of different businesses, and this is the first one, Tandem Works, that I co-own now, where we have started to engage and really pour into an email list. And I really wish we had started sooner. And I
Mm-hmm.
heard it a lot, but it felt like something, especially because I'm not a great writer. And I think that was a big roadblock in my mind
Okay.
is, well, what am I going to write? What am I going to say? So
Yeah.
we just didn't start one for a long time. We have one now, and it's one of my favorite things. And it's
Nice.
funny, right? Like all these years, I'm like, oh my gosh, we could have been engaging, and better late to the game than never. But I kept hearing that, preached. And we teach a lot of social media classes, and I say it in all my classes now. Quite frankly, if I could do business without social media, I probably would.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we teach classes on it. And as I think about it, I go, you probably could with the right type of email, right? Like you
Yeah.
almost could do that. And so I just wanted to say, like, raise a hand and say, I was late to the game with this. I'm still learning and figuring it out. by no means am I an expert, which is why I love being on your email list and learning things, and just to preach it out there. Like, if you're thinking about it, I hope you don't tune away from this episode because I
Yeah.
wish I had it, you know?
It's yeah, that's a good, and I can say that like you are in great company. Like the way that you feel about it, or did feel about it, kind of like before you dove into it. It's funny just because today I was talking to two business owners. They're a couple who they are clients of ours, but they are in our like one of our consulting programs because they're a pretty small company. So basically, we don't do their email for them, but they learn from us and they do it themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to them earlier today because they've been struggling a little bit to get it going. Like they kind of have a lot of starts and stops, and the woman was telling me this is a husband and wife team that have this product, and I won't name them on this show because I don't know if I
Sure.
can do that. But
Sure.
basically, it's a tough product to sell. It is in a very specific niche that has to do with women's reproductive health and like pregnancy and things around that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of misconceptions in their field, and
Mm-hmm.
they struggle to. I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done around their product, and that's sort of a difficult thing. But it's just it reminded me of what you just said because she was saying how like she finds it so easy to just do her social media posts. She's been in that rhythm of
Mm-hmm.
posting on social media for years, but with email, it's a bit harder for her to get going. And she was spending 4 hours a week on just one email, like a kind of a newsletter style email. And she was discouraged because even though they have a decent sized list, it's like not making any sales. And we were looking at her emails together, and I told her, I asked how long you spend on this. She's like, for about 3 to 4 hours a week. And I was like, okay, don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Spend at most 1 hour. And if you want to do this, if you want to just take the time you're using now, do 3 emails per week, but spend at most 1 hour on them. And when you get better at this, it should be more like 20 to 30 minutes. And I
Wow.
said, you're trying to do so much in this email. You're talking about different things going on with you. And then you're telling me about this event that's happening. And then and she's got like, they have a really great, I think, niche and like audience where there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but she buries the product like in the bottom of the email. And I was like, from now on, just try this for the next month. Write emails 3 times a week where it's all focused on the product. And she was like, I'm just like worried about kind of like selling too much and hard selling. And then we had this whole really good
Totally.
brainstorming session. And my brother was there too. And we were talking about like, and he's more the creative brain. So he was giving her all these ideas of like ways that she could still be talking content that's relative to the audience, but with selling the product. It's like
Mm-hmm.
soft selling. Like, and one of the best recommendations was for the people who have the product that they bought it already, for her to like ask them for stories and like things about how the product has helped them, and then use that to write the newsletter. All that is to say, like, you are in great company if you feel like email is hard, right? People think email is hard. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, email is fun. I'm here to tell you, email is fun. And Vivian is saying the same thing, like proof of it right here. Like it is fun to sell your stuff because it's not like it isn't hard selling, right? Some people might do it that way. It doesn't need to be that way. It
Mm-hmm.
is building a relationship and a connection with the one person on the other end of that email who signed up because they have a problem or they have something they need solved, and they signed up because they think you have the answer. And so there's a reason why you're having a conversation with them. So it's a great kind of way to look at
Mm-hmm.
it. But I promise you, if you just start doing it, it becomes fun very quickly.
I really like what you just said, and that was encouraging for me of, hey, they signed up because they think you have something,
Mhm.
whatever it is. So if it's a product, you said you work a lot with e-commerce, it might be the thing. And for
Mhm.
those who are in a service industry, it might be because of, your thoughts or your ideas or your ways or your processes. And I like that. It is one of the things I like, that when I look at our email list, I can literally look at their names, and be like, oh, I don't even know that person, but I
Mhm.
see their name pop up all the time. And then my favorite thing, it gives me so much more pleasure when somebody replies back to an email than when they comment on a social media post. Now, if you're
Right.
listening to that, it doesn't mean that I don't like it when you comment on a social media post. That's great. And I appreciate that. And I love that. But when somebody actually takes time to like click reply
Yep.
and they even write a sentence or two, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, like I throw a mini party. Like I don't have confetti at my desk, but there would be confetti. I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody opened it and read it and replied. Like there's just huge value in that to me, even if there's no sale attached to it. It's like, oh my gosh, they
Yeah.
listened. They're seeing this added value to their life. Because people get, my gosh, how many emails do I get in a day? And I don't want to reply to half of them. So the idea that they actually replied back, I think is huge. It feels pretty incredible.
Yeah, and it's funny because in business and marketing, why is it that no one thinks about trying to get replies? It's crazy. Like I've been doing this
Mm-hmm.
over 6 years, or it's about 6 years right now, and I am still. I thought it would have changed by now. It hasn't. Like in terms of just like whenever I mention to a business owner for the first time, like, have you asked your list this, or do you ask for replies? And they're always like shocked, like, why would I do that? It's like, well, you want people to engage with your social media posts, like to your point, like why wouldn't we want that through email? And it's like it's such a foreign concept of like, oh no, like email is where I'm supposed to just show you a picture of my product and it should say shop now and that's it. And it's like, no, that's not what email is for.
Mm.
So yeah, replies are absolutely it does. It feels better because also the reason is because it is a one-on-one communication channel. So like that is a genuine, somebody is replying to you. There's a psychological thing happening there too, where you are now somebody in their like inner circle, at least, of like the internet in internet terms. Like you
Mm-hmm.
might not be their best friend, but you're somebody who now in their mind they have replied to you. You have a different status. If we want to get like, it's a little influence psychology there, but like you're now seen as a different status than all the other senders in their inbox, which, side note, is great for your deliverability, and the best benefit is they are more likely to buy from you if they feel that way about you. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's cool. What do you find are, I think you're hitting on some of them already, but what do you find are some of the biggest myths about just email marketing in general? I mean, I definitely think of some of like, well, no one's going to ever open it. It just goes to the promotions tab or spam. I mean, and maybe those things are true. Those are just a couple of things that come to my mind. What do you find are some of the biggest myths out there?
So I'd say there's twofold. Like the biggest one, well, these are like, it's hard to pick one of these two. These are kind of like both number one. Would be that if you are a business, that your email should be either very branded or like very formal, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like it tends to be that if it's a product focused business, it's going to be very branded. It all comes from the, like, as if the logo is speaking, like, check out our latest styles, right?
Yeah.
um, or like trying to come up with some cool like witty pun to sell your stuff. And then I think on the like more service based business, it's like very formal, almost like I'm hearing from a lawyer or something.
Right.
And and by the way, I've had this discussion with a lawyer too. It's
Uh
very like a
oh.
lawyer in their email. But that's a mistake, because email, being that it's such a direct and personal channel, there needs to be some human element there. And there's a lot of companies that are resistant to this. And then they find that even if they inject a little more of a human element and have some emails come from, Stacy, the director of brand relationships, right? And then you have a little sign off with her picture in it. Even
Mm,
just doing something like that is better than no person at all. People say they want personalized email marketing these days. This is some like email speak that you see in the industry, is like, oh, I want personalization. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean saying, hey, and then Josh, like my first name? Or does that mean like having some data point where that I'm in the Southeast US, right? To me,
mm-hmm.
that's not personalization. Personalization is personality. it's the same feeling I get when I go to my barber that I've gone to for 4 years because I have a great connection with him and I don't want anyone else to touch my hair, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, right? So I'd say that's number one. Second one is frequency, because, and this might be even more of a thing, is that people are like, I don't want to email too much because people are going to get tired of it or they're going to unsubscribe. And, we see that a lot. Like I'll even see, you know, brands or companies who, when you go to sign up for their email list, it says something along the lines of like, don't worry, we hardly ever send you email. It's like,
Right.
okay, well then why should I
Why
sign
am I sign
up?
up?
But it's sort of this weird like misconception that's sort of like backwards, which is like, oh, we don't want to bother people. But the problem with that is, okay, it's not, you're not thinking about it the right way. When you get emails, and we all do get email inundated, like email inbox clutter, like
Hmm.
over email, like that is a real thing. But the way that email has evolved in the culture, at least email marketing, is like, I don't need to, and I'm not going to read every email that you send.
Hmm.
But I will read some of them. And if they pique my interest, I'll open it. And so you are much better off showing up than not showing up. And what people get completely wrong is they think, well, if I email less, not as many people are going to unsubscribe. They get scared because they start emailing more and they see like unsubscribes and it freaks them out. But the reality is, you get more unsubscribes when you are infrequent and you show up less often. I mean, I can testify to this because with my list, we were just talking before the recording started about how I have admittedly gone through periods where I'm emailing very consistently, and then just because of life things or whatever, I go through a couple weeks where I just can't email. Um,
Hmm.
and I'll notice when I'm coming back out of that and emailing more, then I get scared because I see those unsubscribes. Like I sent an email once recently and I got like 10 unsubscribes and I was like, oh, why? And I was like, what did I do wrong? Like, this was a good email. And on that same email, I had like replies and people who liked it. But I was like, you can't help but feel that little twinge of like, darn.
Totally.
But the truth is, like, you find that when you're in a rhythm of emailing frequently or at least consistently, like it's every day of the week or every week at the same day, like even if it's just once a week or whatever, you'll get way less unsubscribes. It's when
Interesting.
people, they see you and they haven't seen you in a while and they're like, oh yeah, what was this, let me unsubscribe. Like it's just like an easy thing to do at that point. They're like, oh, I don't want
Hmm.
this, because they forget. I mean, we forget. I mean, it's crazy. I say this to my friends all the time. It's like when you talk to a business owner about something and like a client and they're totally on the same page with you, and then the next day they say something, it's like, did they totally forget what we just talked about yesterday? And the answer
Hmm.
is yes. They're
Yeah,
busy.
they did.
They really did. It's not their fault. Like they do forget what you talked about yesterday, because the second we're done this conversation, I'm going to be doing something else. Like I have some other priority. So it's like,
Hmm.
capture people's attention when you get it. And so it's just like with your favorite YouTuber who posts a video every single day. You don't watch it every single day, but it's there. And then you do watch it, like you go back and rewatch it. I do this all the time because I have certain like cooking channels I watch all the time. I
Oh
watch
yeah.
Dave Portnoy's pizza reviews, like not all stuff either. We were just talking earlier. I watch the tornado channels, like where they're doing
Hmm.
storm chasing. But it's like, if I'm like absent for a week from that, I can't do it. Like I'll go back and rewatch stuff later. So that's the big thing. I think probably overall that's like the big one, is thinking like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to email too much. And I promise you, I've seen companies that get away with emailing way more than you would think is possible. I'm talking multiple emails a day,
Mm.
and it works. Like it yes, there are people who will get pissed off like anything, but you just got to remember, like, they are a minority. And like there's so many more people on your list. You have to think that, like, even if just one person found that email valuable and it helped them, then you're doing your job. And so you're doing those people a disservice if you just stop emailing or you're scared to email, right?
Yeah. I think that is so valuable to remember, and it comes back very much to, these are real people on the other side that
Hmm.
are opening in their inboxes. And I can absolutely relate. I was telling you beforehand, I enjoy seeing your emails pop up into my inbox. And I frankly subscribed because I knew we were going to have an interview. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
great, an email list. I'll get to know Josh a little bit beforehand. I do not read them all,
Yeah.
but I like knowing it's there if I want it. And
Yep.
I know there's some psychology behind that too, is people don't like to give up something they already have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you can already be had, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're on my list, continuing to show up does make a lot of sense to me. And I can absolutely raise my hand and say, I have not left email lists that I probably should have because of the frequency I open them, because they email so frequently that I'm like, oh yeah, I do want it. That's right. I do want to. And
Yeah.
I have left email lists that I probably shouldn't have because it did kind of come out random. And I'm like, oh, whatever,
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
I can't have another email here. It's
Yep.
very interesting how our brains and that psychology works in
Yeah.
as well, for
Exactly.
sure. So I'm curious to know too, you work a lot with e-commerce clients. Did you choose that for any particular reason when you were setting up your business model, or do you find email marketing works better or worse for e-commerce versus service-based? What's kind of your thinking behind that?
Well, to answer the second part first, it definitely email marketing works for everyone, no matter what type of business. And even if you don't sell online and you're more like physical brick and mortar, it still works for you. But if you are selling anything online, it's definitely, or you do any type of business online, then it's like a must. Like it's the most effective channel, or it
Mm,
can at least become the most effective channel. It does take a little bit more work sometimes than some other channels, but it's I say that like kind of with trepidation, because once you get going with it, it's not as much work. It's just that, from a standpoint of, if you've never done it before, it's a little bit of a commitment for sure to like make sure you build your email list and write to it, or pay someone to do it. That's a commitment too.
mm-hmm.
Now, how I chose e-commerce is kind of a long story, but the short version is that when my brother and I were in the early stages of just kind of starting this business, we had a mentor who was a sort of an eccentric dude, who is kind of like this underground direct response guy, who is like, he's not like well known, but he is like behind a lot of the more like famous gurus on the internet of like helping them do their marketing.
Oh,
And
interesting. I'm
so
like Batcave status here.
yeah, basically, yeah, I have in my podcast, I actually do an interview with him. It ended up being a two-part interview. He's a really interesting cat to listen to. His name's Mike Becker. But he was kind of like this, like former military, like kind of a hard ass dude that became like an internet guy. And so when we were getting started, he sort of opened our eyes to the fact that e-commerce is such a large and expanding world, industry, economy in and of itself. And most of the like the brands out there, they all know they need email, they all do it, and most of them don't do it right. Most of them
Mm,
are, they just blast their list with the same crap all the time, and they have no idea how to build a relationship with their list, and they don't realize that what they're doing. See, because the thing with email, and I've had this discussion with other like email, people, email nerds or whatever, is that it's kind of a double-edged sword, to where like, even if, for us it's a double-edged sword, because even if you do email terribly, it still works. It still gets
mm,
results. The flip side of that, though, is you could get so much better results, and in both short and long term for your business, if you do it the right way. So basically, our mentor kind of showed us, because he had success in doing email marketing for e-commerce companies, and this is a guy who's like built and sold multiple agencies and stuff. So way more experience than us. He kind of showed us this area of opportunity where we could plug in. And it was like we were developing this skill of direct response email marketing. And at the time, we were kind of like trying to figure it out. Like, do we, like, most of the people that come from our world of direct response email, they will try to get clients who are coaches or consultants, or like weight loss companies, or there's some like very traditional direct response fields that use this skill,
Mm-hmm.
and are more familiar with it. And we basically figured out how to take this to e-commerce, which has been always, and kind of still is to some extent, an uphill battle, because there's this view, another misconception, we don't have to get into this too much, but there's this view of like branding versus direct response, and people think they're kind of two different things. They're at war with each other, because branding is very like design heavy, and they think direct response is very like copy and text heavy. And really what we have found is you need the perfect mixture of both copy and design for
Mm.
e-commerce. And so we have developed sort of a unique point there, where we have very effective classical direct response copy in our emails, combined with really effective direct response design, we call it, where it's like how to visually get people to where you want them in the email. And so that's kind of how it's not the easiest, like for an email business. It is not the easiest field to be like specializing in terms of e-commerce, because there's a lot of, I think, barriers to entry,
Mm-hmm.
especially today, where maybe there wasn't 6 years ago when we started this. But today there's like a million email agencies for e-commerce businesses, and and they all kind of make the same claims and stuff. So it's a tougher market right now. But yeah.
I see a lot too, having done some things in a subscription box industry,
Mm,
which relied heavily on email marketing. It was a lot of, I guess, what I would call, it was almost like trying to duplicate a magazine page in an email.
mm-hmm.
And I did always wonder about it, right? Like, I don't sit down to read digital magazines. That's not something I do. It's a
Right.
different experience to hold a magazine, but it's so image driven. It's like headline, image, button, right? It was
Yeah.
kind of like the typical formula. And I did always wonder about it, right? I didn't know what I was wondering about, but it makes sense to me that you would mix. When I'm opening an email, I'm hoping to read something,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I want to just look at a pretty picture, I'm not really looking for that in my email. That's not where my head's at.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the flip side, like you said, I know there can be a lot of great results from pretty picture,
Yep.
click a button. So
Yeah.
it is intriguing to think about how can we make this different and better. So I really
Yeah.
enjoy that. Okay, so we haven't even got to talk yet about how the heck did you start a business? Like, was this a childhood dream? You went from like lemonade stands and flyers to like, let's digitize this and make it email, or how
You
did
know,
that even happen?
part of it actually, it's crazy because when we were kids, my brother and I had like various entrepreneurial things that we would do, and it's just a product of, I think, how we grew up. Like, we were just in such a very like typical suburban middle class area in New Jersey, with pretty like diverse mix of friends and people of all different backgrounds, and our our lives, I guess the typical kid's life in that area was like half the year doing sports, or not half the year because it was cold. Like, I'd say a quarter of the year, like, you're outside playing sports, and then the rest of the year you're like inside, like, bored and like playing video games, right? And so my parents, I think, were really smart, because I have, there's 5 years. I'm the older one. That my brother's 5 years younger than me. But I think from the time that we were like super little, like when I was like 7 or 8, and he's like 3 or whatever, um, it was kind of like, you guys, you're a team. Like, figure out your lives together. You're a team, and like, what they allowed us to do was, our house got to be sort of the center of the attention for the kids. So we would always have kids coming over, and the group would always hang out. So like, we had my friends who were a little older, his friends who were a little younger, but we all just mixed. And so we started just doing creative things. We built a casino uh, in my parents' basement when I was like
All
10 or
right.
11 or something like that. And we like made our own, because this is South Jersey. So like Atlantic City is there. There's like some influence, I think, nearby from like there's casino culture, right? And so we had like a little play. Like it started off with just like a deck of cards and like some little play tables with like some green felt, and we were like learning how to do the games. And then like years later, when I was in high school, like my high school graduation party, I had something like 50 or 60 people throughout the night that came over from like my high school, and like all these kids dealing games. Like I had at that point like a real blackjack table, roulette table, like all this stuff. And by the way, this was all play money. We were not
Okay, I was
in.
just gonna ask. I was like,
Yeah.
so because
No.
I grew up in Reno, Nevada, the biggest little
Oh,
city
so,
in the
yeah, that's
world.
right. Yeah.
So like casinos are a good childhood memory for me, which I
Really?
say that and people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, no, no, no. I've actually never gambled once in my life. But I love the chingering. I love the lights. I love the neon. I love the sound of slot machines. So
That's
I can
cool.
kind of resonate with you
Yeah.
here. I'm like, I love the atmosphere of a casino, even though I saw a lot of destruction caused by
Yeah.
the
Oh,
gambling industry. So
yeah.
please continue. I'm like, wow, I don't think I've ever connected with somebody who, as a child, also is like, I have these great memories of like casinos.
Remind me, I'll forward you because you weren't on my list at this point, but I did, I think it was last summer, I did like a series of emails where, because my mom, like out of nowhere, found some old box with pictures, and she sent
Oh,
me these pictures of our casino parties when we were kids. So
oh, this
I
is
did like
great.
a whole thing, an email series, and I told the story and sent these pictures out. So I'll have to forward you the email. But yeah, I mean, it was, for us, it was just because there were other things too. Yeah, we did the lemonade stand. I did at one point, I think fortune telling, like palm reading. I had like I got a
Nice.
book. I might have been 11 or 12 or something like that. I had a book where it like taught me how to do palm reading, and then I did a little stand outside in the summer. It was weird. I
Yeah.
was a weird kid.
What do you
But
charge for palm readings as a kid?
I think it was $5.
Nice. That's pretty good.
Probably worth a lot more in
Yeah.
2003 or whatever it was, right? But yeah, so the casino thing was just fun. Like we had our friends learn how to deal the games with us, and then what would happen is we would do these parties during the summer where it would be like you have the neighborhood parents come over of those kids, and like our family, like cousins and aunts and uncles and things like that, and then just some random friends, and they'd come and play, and we would give them like everybody would get the same amount of like play money in the beginning, and then we would have like prizes if you like finished the night with the highest amount or whatever.
That's cool.
um, but yeah, fast forward a long time from that, I mean, we always knew we wanted to be in business. I mean, that's just kind of who we've always been. And that we wanted to have like a similar kind of fun business thing with our friends. And we had no idea how to do that though. And of course, like you grow up and it's like the typical, like go to college, get a degree, get a job. And so we were both in that sort of trajectory. I went to school for hospitality because and it was actually near Atlantic City. And I thought, I've liked that casino thing. So maybe I need to work in the casinos. I hated that. It was horrible.
Mm,
The actual work in the casinos, the school was fine.
yeah.
And then, Ben, my brother, went to school for, I think he started off with like a, sports medicine thing and then switched to real estate. And then I ended up in law school, sort of like waiting for him. No, but like we were, like I said, we're a few years apart. So when he was in college, he moved to Florida to go to college at FSU, and I went to law school at the University of Miami. And the only reason I was in law school is because I kind of got lost, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what I want my career to be. And I had like advisors in college that were like, oh, like you're smart and you're good at like you're good at persuasion and stuff, so go to law school. And so I was like, all right, fine. Like I took the LSAT, and I was like, all right, this will work. Go down there, and the whole time I'm like, I had fun in law school because it was a lot of just like cool stuff. Like I did like a litigation skills thing where I got public speaking experience, and there were some, I liked arguing with my classmates, like formally, and doing stuff like that.
For sure.
But the whole time I'm like, there's no chance I'm going to be a lawyer. Like I saw the
Mm,
misery of, and God bless all the lawyers out there, by the way. love you all. Like my friend, I have so many like lawyer friends, but I can't do it. I can't be like tied to some, it's just like too dense for me. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, at this time, I discovered we sort of fell backwards into the digital marketing space. And to give you like I promise I'll do this quickly. Like the background on that, when I was in college, I was on this email list called Dating Advice Daily. So it was a guy who was giving advice for guys who were shy with girls, and that was me. And so like I learned so much from reading this Dating Advice Daily newsletter and learned that like there's a really like good smooth way to to talk to women. I was like, this is when I was like 20, and I was just like super shy. So this I basically, long story short, kept up with that newsletter over the years. Like I'd read it. It was every single day. This guy would send a newsletter. One day I'm in law school, and he sort of pivots his newsletter a little bit to where he starts talking about how he actually became a millionaire at the age of 24 with this Dating Advice Daily newsletter. And the reason is because he would write like full books, like PDF books on these topics. And he'd also make like video courses. And it would be like, one of them was like the most charming thing you could ever say. And it would be like a $97 product, and it would be like 4 videos, and it's actually like about how to have a conversation on a coffee date, right? So it was stuff like
Nice.
that, but he actually like his email list grew to the point where I guess it was 30 or 40,000 people, and he told this story about how he wanted to go to Vegas for the weekend. So he uh, very quickly created like a 7 video product and put it for sale for his email list on a Friday. He emailed the list. It was $47 product. Went to Vegas, didn't look at his like ClickFunnels or whatever, didn't look at his sales. Went to Vegas, spent like 10 to 12K in a weekend in Vegas. Came back, looked, and that one email had made something like 30 grand. And he tells us that story, and it was like that's when I'll never forget. I was in, I think it was like the early second year of law school, and I'm reading that email. This would have been like 2015, and I was like, what am I doing? Like this guy just he sent an email to his list and made $30,000 in a weekend, and I was like, there's something to this. So he ended up having an event in Vegas actually, where it was not really just him, but it was all these other what I would call digital millionaires or email millionaires who had built these newsletters and were now successful beyond what you would even like imagine. Like at least at that time, I'm sitting next to kids in class who are like super stoked to go work for a big law firm because they'll make 130K a year out of the gate. And I'm in a room now with guys who are making over $1 million in a year just by writing an email. So that sort of like blew my mind. And me and Ben had like a conversation. We went home for Christmas break, and we were like on our way home driving, and from Florida back to Jersey. And we had this whole conversation of like, let's not get into careers first. Let's actually just start a business while we're kind of finishing school here. We had no idea what we were going to sell or what we were going to do. We just knew we need to figure out how to do what they're doing. Like that's how we want to live our lives. We don't want to do 9 to 5s. We don't want to do what I had done at the casinos, which was more like midnights to 8 a.m. Like we don't want to do that, right? So we that was the first step, was like deciding this is what we're going to do. And then from there, it went into several years of what I'll hesitate to say was torture building it at first, you know? And so that's where, like, I don't know how much you want to get into that stuff, but it was definitely not easy. We made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Which is,
Well, I do. I mean, this might be a 5-part interview at this point now, because now I'm like, okay, there's a million things. I know I say that every time in the episode, but I think I really mean it for real. Because, all right, you do see and hear these things, right? And you see it on the internet a lot. People are like, I went from, out of a cardboard box to a millionaire in a week with one email and things like that. And on one side, you're like, holy buckets, like, how do I? And then on the flip side, I think there's a lot of skepticism too. And so, yes, I am curious, like, did it work? Like, did you get there, quickly? And because I do think there's like, it's a mix. I mean, from my experience, it is a mix of, yeah, it is true. And it is possible. And you don't have to do a 9 to 5, and you really can do this. On the flip side, there's a lot of gosh dang hard freaking work that goes in.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he sent an email, but it took him work to get to the point where he had an email list to send one email to, right? I mean, I guess that's where my mind starts going. So please do divulge a bit on what's the reality of pursuing that dream.
Yeah. So there's different ways to do it, because you can, and I see this a lot, where you can have a career first. And you know what? Some people don't have the choice that me and my brother had, which was, we were in school. We didn't have attachments to where people are depending on us to have an income, right? So we took a huge risk that was, in hindsight, not the best. I'll tell you about that in a second. But like, not everybody has that choice. I know people who are in careers and they want to start a business, but the reality is they have a family to feed. And if you're somebody like that, I don't recommend quitting your job to start a business. What I do recommend is part-time work on something that is very viable, that can get you some quick wins until you're at the point where you can quit your job and start a business. And that is such a hard thing to do. And there's no, anyone that says it's easy is just lying. And I think we're at a point in society, internet moves very fast. No one really says it's easy anymore. That I think, because we're so like so much more sophisticated as consumers these days on the internet, that we can smell the BS. Like, we know when something is not true. So, yes, like, for every success story, there's a lot of failures, right? And so, now what we did, when I was in law school, I did have a job on the side. And when I was in college, I was working in the casinos, like I mentioned. So I had a time period where I would work to make money. And like, while I was in school, I was working part-time on the side. And so what that didn't mean that I could save money, because I didn't save anything. But what I did do was, I got a credit card that was like a very small limit. And then I would pay it off, like, always, like, in full. And I built up a lot of like credit in the course of, maybe, I guess, between college and law school, like 7 years. And so what happened was, when we decided we were going to start a business, this is very, very stupid to do, but I applied for as many credit cards as I could, and got something like 30 to 40 grand in just credit cards.
Ooh.
And then we decided that we were going to just build the business, and I was going to live off credit cards. Now, at the time, my brother was still in school. He had 1 year left. So he was doing school, and it was his hardest year, because it was a senior year. And like, my parents were not going to be okay with him like dropping out early. So he didn't do that. I graduated law school, and then I started working on this idea of just a digital marketing business, which initially was not email marketing focused. That came later, after a year where basically everything we tried didn't work. We actually had some good advice and also some bad advice in the first year. And I ended up in a really bad situation where I blew through the credit cards, had no income to pay them. What ended up happening is, I had an apartment in Miami at the time. My law school roommates had moved out. And so I had these spare bedrooms, and that was stupid too. I felt like I didn't have time to move anywhere. So like, I kept paying rent with my credit during this time. And then I ended up in a situation where the only answer that I found was to rent out those 2 rooms on Airbnb. and also drive for Uber every day in Miami, which was a crazy thing. And so my day to day for about, I don't know, like not quite a full year, like 8 months, consisted of having strangers in my apartment, renting, like staying in the other rooms, and constantly different ones because it was on Airbnb. So it's just like tourists coming to Miami, staying at my place. And I was doing the cleaning because I couldn't afford a maid service or anything. I needed
Mm-hmm.
the money to pay my rent. So in between guests, I'm like running around scrubbing bathroom floors and toilets and disgusting crap, like picking like hair out of the bed, all kinds of stuff. And then when people are there, I leave after they get settled and I'm driving around Miami as an Uber. Um, so that went on for too long, and eventually I couldn't keep it up anymore and I lost my place. Um, that is a sad story that I don't wish upon anybody. It was a very difficult time in my life where it was sort of like the proving to myself and the universe that I was going to be committed to doing this business thing, even beyond that, like even with that happening. So essentially regrouped at this time, right around the end of that period when I couldn't hang on to my place anymore. Luckily, they didn't evict me. Like we came to an agreement and they just let me leave. But I ended up having to move back into my parents' house and live in the basement. And I was at this time, I would have been 26 or 27. I think I was 27. I hadn't been home. I hadn't lived at home for years since I was like 18 or 19. So it was a challenging time. Like my friends, like I didn't want to see them, like all that kind of stuff. I'm in the basement. And what happened was at that same time was when we met Mike Becker, the guy I mentioned earlier.
Mm.
Ben actually, through a friend, got connected with this guy, Mike Becker, who we kind of went to him. We didn't have money really, but he had this coaching program for email marketing and email copywriting. And we had friends in the group who were friends with us through our digital marketing like circle. And they were like, you guys should really do this. Like they were having success. So my brother emailed this Mike Becker character and said, like, basically told him like, we really want to be in this program. We don't have like the money for it, but like, we really want to do it. And he agreed to let us in for $500. And I think at the time it was like probably a $5,000 program or something. And
Wow.
it was really nice of him. And like we paid that with Ben's student loan money. And then that's how we ended up in this program. So now I'm like at home in my parents' basement every day going through this program. And there was live coaching calls where this dude, Mike Becker, would just destroy me. Like it was like practice sales calls because now I'm learning how to sell email marketing to businesses. So that was like how it was. And then I couldn't like, we won't like, I actually tell all these stories on my podcast, The Email Revolution. Sorry about the plug there.
Perfect. No, that's great.
Um, so I ended up, because my home environment, like at my parents' house, is not a good environment for me. Like I started got into like smoking weed and stuff, and like it was just kind of challenging to stay focused there. Like was seeing old friends and stuff that I probably shouldn't have been during that time. So I ended up moving down back to Florida, moving in with my brother into his college apartment during his last year, and slept on the floor because it was a studio apartment, one room. And that's where the email agency was born. Like
Mm.
we came up with this idea, like, let's just call ourselves the email agency, because at the time this was early 2018, or pretty much the year of 2018. So like there wasn't a lot of this out there. Anytime you would look up marketing agency, it would be like social media marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered later, we were having this idea at the same time as a lot of other people, because now most of the other email agency owners I know also started right in that same 2018 to 2020 period. But yeah, that was, so then we went through like the hell of like 4 months living together in that little apartment, being like working on this business while he's finishing his last semester, and like trying not to kill each other. And like finally one day got our first client, Savage Gentleman. And they were not technically our first client, but they were our first like real email marketing client under this email agency thing that we had created. And so it was really, really exciting, but it took a lot to get to that point. And it's never like, it hasn't been, we're not at the stage, and we're 5 to 6 years into this. We're on the cusp, but we're not like anywhere near where we want to be. You know, we're about a $500,000 a year company. We are working our butts off right now to get to over $1 million a year. It hasn't been easy. There are times that, certainly now, I'm super thankful because it's so much better, like night and day from what it was those first like 2 years. But any kind of business, it really does take a lot out of you. You have to be committed to it. Um, there are people who find success a lot quicker, but usually they go through a much harder struggle period for a shorter period of time. Ours hasn't been terrible. Like we've been able to feed ourselves, um, and we've been lucky in a lot of ways, but it's been challenging for a good 5 years. Everything from, like, there was another partner in this business initially that I didn't mention. He left a few years ago. We went through that whole thing. Like, that's difficult because he was a good friend of ours. There's like the challenges of clients, the challenges of money, the challenges of paying people, and dealing with that. So, that's my look into, like, for people who are starting this. The thing that I always tell people is, don't ride the roller coaster, because no matter what, you're going to have these super highs where you feel like, oh my God, like you accomplished something huge, and you're going to get really high off of it. Like just natural, just beautiful feeling of
Mm-hmm.
accomplishment. And then you're going to have these painful times where just, stuff isn't working out. One after another thing isn't working out, and you feel like crap, and you want to get really low. Just don't do either. Like, always be as much as you can in the middle, and realize that the happy medium is where you want to live. Don't ride those waves.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And thanks for sharing so much. And I'm so glad you did plug your podcast, because there's clearly way more than
Yeah.
we can cover in stories here. And I think
Yeah.
it's so encouraging to hear people's stories, because we can all relate to pieces. And we can also, I think, honestly, like you're saying, like we can look at the people's stories and goes, oh my gosh, I don't have it that bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I, I could pick myself up here. Or, yeah, they also overcame a really hard, challenging time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot in there that I can for sure relate to. Like, started a business super young with someone who's now my ex-husband,
Mm-hmm.
blew through money like no one's business, which was incredibly stressful, borrowed a ton of money, worked our butts off to get that paid back, had very different money philosophies that added a lot of, wild stress.
Yep.
Also ended up back in my parents' basement, but at the grand age of 30 something.
Yep.
It's a lot, when you go through those things. And I remember also having those thoughts in my head of like, okay, am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
get to decide at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day what I want to do. And those are interesting questions to wrestle through and decide, like you said, like, am I going to prove this out? And no judgment to those who go, no, I'm not, to
Yeah.
hit that point and go, okay, I tried that. I don't like it. And I want to do a 9 to 5, or I want to do something else. Like, you have to wrestle with those
Yeah.
questions, and only you can do that, right? There's no podcast you can listen to. There's no book you can read. There's no 5 tips. You can
Yeah.
use those as tools, but at the end of the day, you have to make that decision for yourself, because you're
Yeah.
going to have to live with yourself.
That's a great point. There's also, like, Colonel Sanders, the Kentucky Fried Chicken guy. He
Yes.
started that business at 62. So, like,
Yeah.
that's another thing, is like, especially if you have responsibilities and you have a family, like, the trade off is, I don't yet and I want one. And it's like, I have to, like, get through this period first before I can have that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're someone who has that, and it's like, starting a business is like gonna like be threatening to your well-being and your family's well-being, because you may go through really hard times, there's nothing wrong with doing it later. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what you can do in the meantime is build the knowledge so that you don't make stupid mistakes, like, or you don't make
Right.
as many stupid mistakes. But yeah, like, I know people who are in that situation where, like, they are entrepreneurs at heart. They really want to do it, but they know they can't do it right now because they have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And it's like, don't worry about it. Just learn everything you can, and you will be able to start a business at some point. Like, it's much better in some ways to, have, you're never going to have like a good plan to, hate to break that to you, but like whatever plan you
Yeah.
have is, if you haven't started the business yet, it's going to go totally different than what you think. But
Mm-hmm.
what you can do is build as much like sort of like fallback knowledge, where like if this were to happen, I actually heard advice on what to do about that. So that's
Yes.
what you can do in the meantime.
That's huge. And I think it is an easy one to equate to kids. Troy and I don't have kids of our own, but we have started doing foster care. And we're a
Oh,
little older in our lives. We're not in our 20s,
right.
starting off with little kiddos. And it is true. I mean, you can equate the same of, if we had started in our 20s with children, we'd be way further along, But on the flip side, we did spend years gathering, watching, observing, learning what we could. And it's not the same as firsthand experience. Like when the
Mhm.
child is there and in your home, you're like, whoa, different ball game. But we can pull back on, okay, we've heard people talk about this before, or we've seen friends go through this. Like, I know who to call, I know who to talk to, and I feel like we can glean from that experience. Same with business. That's such
Mhm.
a great point of, maybe you can look back and be like, I'm not going to live off of credit cards. I saw someone else
Yeah.
do that in their
Right.
20s. I'm 45 or, 62 or whatever. I don't think I'm going to do that,
Yeah. Bad
So, and
idea.
you just can't have had that experience that early on. You're like, this will be a great idea. It'll be fine. We'll make so much money. We'll just pay it off in a year. Imagine
Yeah.
my credit score. It's going to be through the roof.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the same time, I mean, the flip side of it is, for some people, like, if you have that pull to do something and you're scared because of all the things that could go wrong, you should just do it. Because um, I've never met someone who's been through something like this and not come out the other side and made it through. As long as, like, if it's
Mm-hmm.
something you really want to do, and you're passionate about, being your own boss and building something, right? Like, you will do it. You just have to be willing to take the plunge. Um, and it is scary for people to not get that regular paycheck. And,
Totally.
I can't say that, like, it's not going to be that way, because I know successful businesses that we work with that like have gone through hard periods at various times when they were way further along. I know
Mm-hmm.
myself, like, we've been through just several of those periods over the years where you hit that like weird doldrum period where all of a sudden like the expenses outweigh the cash flow, and now you have to like scramble to do a million things to fix that. And like
Mm-hmm.
um it happens, I think, for a stretch of anytime you're trying to grow. It happens like it's one of those things where the good news is, if you call this good news, once it happens to you several times, you get so jaded by it that you're like, okay, again, like, I know what to do here. Like, this is going to
Yeah.
suck for a few months, and I'm just going to deal with it. Like, I've learned how, even in this economy, to live off of $20 a day for myself and no more when I have to
Mm-hmm.
do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Josh, I'm curious. I don't know if this plays in. I remember being intrigued by some pre-conversation back and forth for the podcast. You mentioned something called a mental desk exercise.
okay,
Do I
yeah,
have that right? That you
I
use a
did. I'm
mental desk
sure.
exercise.
Yeah.
Do you like? How do you? Is that a tool that you use to help through these things? I just see mental desk health or mental desk exercise. I think, okay, is this like some mental health thing that you do at your desk, or like? Or
No.
do you have something that you like to use to help you stay in the middle and not ride the roller coaster?
Hmm.
Like,
That's
practically
so
speaking,
funny.
that's one thing to say, but how do you do it?
Yeah, I wonder where you saw that. Probably in an email.
Probably an email.
Yeah. So it was actually taught to me by Jason Capital, and he's the guy that I mentioned earlier that had the Dating Advice Daily newsletter. Um, so the mental desk exercise is where you take a piece of paper, or a few pieces of paper or a journal or something. You sit down and you set a timer for 10 minutes, and then you just write out on the paper in a list form everything that's on your mind, like every little thing that comes up that you're dealing with. And you do it purposely you do it over time because you want to get like, meaning like 10 minutes or 15 or however long, that the goal of it is to get to the point where you really feel complete, like, okay, what else have I been thinking about? And you like can't think of anything else. Then you look at the paper, and the first thing that you do is you go and you read it one by one and you cross out the things that are totally outside your control, like that you have no control over, because we all have those things in our brains all the time. So you cross
Totally.
those things out. Then you look at what's left, and basically the next step is to figure out like which of these things are really like the important things. And it's just a prioritization exercise from that point. And I've done it different ways over the years. Like, one is you can just look at the, what's left and sort of like circle the big three things, and then kind of go from there. And another one I've always liked is where you put them in quadrants of like urgent,
Mm-hmm.
important, urgent and important, or not urgent, not important. And that one takes a little bit longer. I do it like any time where it's been just one of those time periods where I feel just so overwhelmed, where I'm
Totally.
like having anxiety because I don't know how to just manage all the stuff I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, you start with the stuff that you label UI, like urgent, important. And it definitely works. I think it's something that, like, if you are somebody that's got a lot of stuff on your plate, it's a good way to just sit down, write it all out, and then approach it with a fresh like state of mind. I've run into challenges with that recently, to where I've realized it's not a perfect fit for some of the stuff where I'm at now. Is like, I actually, or not now, but like recently, I was like, some of the stuff that's holding me back is not urgent or important, but it's like stuff I've just had on my plate that I just haven't done. And I was like, I can't honestly say it's urgent or important, but if I leave it there, then it's like a weight on your mind. So like that I would call an open loop. And that's just when you have these little things that are just nagging at you because you never did them, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
really even want to, but it's like you got to close those loops. So you got to go through and figure out, okay, do it, because the loop could be, this is something I've meant to do. I've had this stupid tab open on my browser for
Yep.
17 days,
Yeah.
and just make the decision to just forget it. That can
Mm-hmm.
be an answer. Just forget it. And then in another case, it might be something like, I sent an email yesterday that basically uh, ended a ongoing thing that I had for a long time. And I was like, you know what? I know how to take care of this. I'm just going to send this email and then it's going to be done.
Hmm.
And I did, and it's done, and I'm happy about it. So it's like I can focus on other stuff now. So
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. That's good. Michaela, my business partner, we use that quadrant.
Yeah.
Same, right? Like we can see it with each other. We're like, whoa, you're spiraling. And Michaela's like, do you need to do the quadrant right now? And she like pulls out the tape, or we have a whiteboard now just with tape on it for it. I know it is a huge, huge help for sure. I
Yep.
love that idea of what you can control, what you can't control.
Yep.
Having done similar exercises, I am so often surprised every time by like, why is this even in my head? Like most of it I can't control. Most of it I can't. And so
Mhm.
that really helps a lot. But okay, my friend, I have to start wrapping us up because we're at like an hour 10 here, which has
Okay.
been great. So thank you for the time. But I usually wrap up with a couple of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Um, we've talked about a few of these, but short answer
Quick
to a
answers.
few of these.
Okay.
They're just fun. Some are
Yeah.
fun, some are deep. So, first is, what do you think is the biggest misconception about owning a business?
Just already a tough one. What is the
I
biggest
know. We'll start deep.
misconception about owning a business? Probably that you can't like mix work and fun. Like, you
Mm,
can't do both. I always try to make sure that like the business is part of my fun life as much as I can.
that's cool. That's good. Is there an important piece of advice that you've really taken to heart? You've shared a couple, but does anything stick out to you? Or like, yeah.
regarding just like anything.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that you, I don't know who told me this or if I just kind of figured this out over the years, but like everyone in the business journey, like everyone that you're going to meet along the way has something to offer, like something to teach you. And so
Mm.
that includes people who are like way less experienced than you. Um, I find that like I can learn from just like, even if people like, basically it's say yes more often if you can, then rather than just being dismissive of like different people that reach out to you or like opportunities that you find. We're all busy and it's a hard thing when people like cold outreach you and they want
Mm-hmm.
to talk about something. It's like hard. I try to do it though once in a while, like even if I don't think it's something that I necessarily want. If I see a potential opportunity, I'll get on a call with someone just to kind of learn, because people do have things to offer and you can learn a lot from like anyone that's in business. You'll learn something.
I think you are a perfect example of this in that we chatted beforehand. We didn't know each other at all before
Mhm.
this. And there are services out there that help connect guests and podcast hosts and that. And you were one of many emails, and
Mhm.
I'm one of many emails for you as far as like connecting. And it was just like I think I'm gonna say yes to this one. And this has been
Yeah.
so great, like so great, and such
Yeah.
a random, I mean, truly random connection. So
Yeah, no, same here. Like I didn't know much about your show at all before today, other than I knew
yeah,
I think I rescheduled you once or
yeah,
something. I've done that to people lately, but just busy. But yeah, great connections on this show for sure. Like I learned
yeah.
a lot already. So
Thanks.
yeah.
Hey, do you have a favorite kickback and relax beverage?
What type of beverage are we talking?
Everyone always asks. I'm gonna have to like rephrase this one because everyone's always like, "You mean like alcohol?" And I'm like, "It could be anything. Like I like hot tea. I also like old fashions." So
That's weird too. Like old fashions are my favorite drink. But
yeah.
and then I would say like other than that, um, yeah, definitely Topo Chico. It's like
Okay.
the sparkling water. I have like like I have this mini fridge downstairs just filled with them, and like I go
Nice.
through them so quickly. I'm like going to the store like every 4 to 5 days to get another case. So I'll just drink them throughout the day.
Gotta have a subscription. I'm really into like the bubbler right now, which is like a
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The where you make
yeah.
your own like soda.
Yeah, it's like a well, this one isn't. This one comes canned ready to go. I have seen where you make your own, but
Oh
it is a soda water. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Hey, okay, last three for you then. Is there a book, song, or podcast that you just like can't stop talking about or singing or humming in your head right now?
So for me, it's going to be a book for sure, because I read a lot, and I usually read these days through listening to audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a combo. But the book Essentialism is one that I tell all the time people to read if you're in business, and even if you're not, because it's really a good life book. Um, Essentialism by Greg McCune, and it's basically how to do more by doing less. And
Cool.
it is a life changing book.
Okay. Love it. I love it already.
Yeah.
Okay, last two for you. What excites you the most about the future?
Right now, for me, it I always hesitate to like give timelines because I'm wrong usually, but at a time in my life where I feel that I've come to almost the end of living in this space here in Tampa, Florida.
Hmm.
Um, Me and my brother share this apartment. It's a townhouse here. And we are both looking to move west to Arizona, like Scottsdale.
Yeah, cool.
We have some friends out there, and we've been kind of like eyeing it for the last few years. We went and spent like a month out there in 2022, and then we went there again last year. And we're getting close to the time where I feel like we're going to be able to make that move. And then once there, like I think, and our business has to be at a certain point for this to happen, which is why I say like it could take longer. We don't know, but we feel like we're getting closer. And basically, the plan is once we're there, like building like new social lives, meeting people and hopefully like building a life, right? and
Yeah.
and so like we have a life here, but it's definitely more. This has we Where we live right now in Tampa, St. Petersburg, Florida, has always been sort of, we knew going in, it's sort of that transition period where we build our business.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then yeah, I think we're going to be moving on soon to the next thing, so that's very exciting for us.
That's cool. So you'd be like hiking with your 8 kids, if I'm reading between the lines here.
I don't know about Uh, but definitely, definitely trying to, build a new type of life out there
Yeah,
for sure.
sure. All right, last one for you then. What do you think business owners can do that makes the world a better place?
Sell your stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's, recency bias, I guess. But I mentioned earlier in this conversation the couple who I talked to earlier today, who are business owners, and they are so passionate about what they do, and they really, really want to help people.
Mm.
And yet they offer so much value, and the problem that I identified today with them was like, you're way too afraid to sell your stuff, even though that what you created helps people. Like, you have the proof right there. It's helped so many people already, and like, you're shy about selling it.
Mm.
They can help more people by marketing and sales, and like actually like not being afraid to sell. And I think a lot of business owners are like, I don't want to push sales. I don't want to be like that. But it's like, that is the way that it's why you're an entrepreneur. That is the way you add value, is by selling. So you can't be afraid of that.
I love that. Very cool. Otherwise, go start a nonprofit. And then you've got to sell yourself raising money. So,
Exactly. Yeah, we've worked with nonprofits too.
yeah,
We did a thing where we helped raise 500K for some charities, Children's Miracle Network and stuff, through a
cool.
an e-commerce store that partners with them and does this whole thing. It's really cool. Love that. Definitely, you got to sell though.
Yeah, in the end, you're still selling. You're selling twice then at that point, when you think about it. So, okay,
Yeah.
another conversation, another time for sure. But Josh, thank you, and thanks for sharing just such tangible advice at the beginning. I mean, I'm like, we've come a long ways in the
Yeah.
conversation. Like, if you're thinking about email lists, you kind of just have to do it now. I mean, you can't have listened to this and go, oh, I think I'm going to put it off. Like, please don't put it off. And if you're interested in connecting, Josh, you have a couple of free resources or
Yep.
resources. I guess not necessarily all free, but I know you have one.
Yep.
Best way for people to connect and get a hold of those.
Yeah, these are all free. There is an email newsletter, right, that I run. That's the best one. Surprise, but
Yeah, get on it.
it's called the Email Revolution. And the best way to join is go to email123.club. Very, very simple, email123.club, and sign up. And we teach you how to use direct response email marketing to give yourself an edge in your business, no matter what business you have. And I do write emails pretty frequently, but it's not anything crazy. I definitely recommend, getting on there and reading the ones that speak to you. And then if you do have a business, and especially if you do sell physical products online, we have something called the Email Profits Cheat Sheet. And that's at emailprofitscheatsheet.com. And that's it's a free PDF. It's a download guide where it basically takes our system that we have done for years successfully and been able to grow, to build and grow $1 million email programs. It shows you that system at a high level. So like the blueprint of how to do it. And so definitely
Cool.
recommend checking that out. I'm sure you'll put the links in the
I
description
will.
for these things.
Absolutely.
And then the only other thing I would say is that if you want to, if you're interested in getting help with your email marketing, you can check out my website. It's called theemailagency.com. Also a pretty simple one, theemailagency.com. And what you can do there is click the button to get a free audit. So like if you have a business and you have email going, but like you're not sure like if it could be better, or you think it could probably, just do a free audit with us. No obligation. We'll audit your program and show you like what you're doing, what you could be doing better.
Right. Cool. I love it. Well, Josh, you don't have to commit to this, but I'd like to stay friends. Like, this was cool.
Yeah. I mean,
I really
hey, you're
enjoyed
on my
this.
email list. Like, yeah, we will stay
Yeah.
friends. And no, I don't mean just like through there, but I mean like you're the first podcaster that's actually like told me, hey, I read your emails. So yeah, definitely excited about
Yeah. No, they're great emails. Like, do get on the email list. I have enjoyed it. I think I said it already, but like to the point where I have shared it with our clients with credit, of course, of like, this is what I'm talking about. This is what,
yeah,
and so I think there's high value there. Like, I don't go sharing things unless I think there's good value. So Josh,
yeah,
thanks again. Thanks for the extra time on a little bit longer conversation. I think it was so worth it for everyone listening. So I appreciate you just being
yeah,
generous with your time with us today,
for
too.
sure. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
I can't wait for this
Yeah.
episode to come out. This is one of those ones that I can't wait to share with people. So
Cool. Well, I'm so glad. That's awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much. Okay. So that wraps up this episode of Riding Tandem. And what did I say? Like I promised, right? Such a great conversation. So many things that can be just gleaned from this conversation, learned. I just felt incredibly encouraged. And I hope that you are as well. That is one of the main purposes of putting this podcast together. And I love how Josh pulled in such tangible life lessons, gives real encouragement for you, whether you are, just getting started in life, if you will. You're on the younger end of the spectrum and you're thinking about getting something started, or maybe you're at a different life stage right now, like Josh talked about, just some really practical advice there, as well as, hey, if you haven't gotten started with an email list, here's your sign. Like, now's the time. This is such a valuable tool. And I love how Josh called it an asset. Like, you can literally tie a dollar amount, an asset, to your email list. I just so appreciate each of you. And thank you so much for tuning into this podcast, for being a supporter. As you know, if you listen to podcasts, your reviews and shares are so valuable and important for us to be able to continue making content like this. If you haven't already, would you just take a moment to leave a review, give some 5 stars? That would be awesome. Leave a review on the platforms that have space for that, as well as love to have you join our email list so that you can receive just some really fun, great, and encouraging messages direct from me and be up to date on all of the latest podcasts as well. So if you'd like to join that, be sure to look for the link in the notes section wherever you're listening to this podcast. Thanks so much, and get out there and do some really great things.